frequent part of my life as a priest are the 40-day blessings and the baptisms of children. As I hold the child, talk with the family, even preach to those in attendance, I emphasize that Christians are made, not born. This insight from the ancient church reminds us that while we may have been born into a Christian family, each of us had to become a Christian through baptism and incorporation into the church. We had to accept baptism and the faith of the church, even though for many of us it was our sponsors who spoke for us. But after baptism, what does it take to make an Orthodox Christian? What kinds of experiences and environments are needed throughout a life that create a faithful Christian and nurture mature faith? Are there better ways to hand forward the Orthodox Christian faith and way of life to another person, another generation? These are the questions that Orthodox Christian religious educators wrestle with. We examine and reflect on the many factors involved in making an Orthodox Christian, whether in days of old or for many of us in our contemporary world. While we may consider religious instruction as central, and it does play an important role, we have to consider the wider context where that instruction occurs. Looking at history, we can see that we have been able to rely upon living in a religiously homogeneous community with supporting societal structures and contexts to shape an Orthodox Christian religious identity. Today, we must concede that many of these influences have changed dramatically, weakening in some ways, even in homogeneously Orthodox Christian countries such as Greece. In North America, where I live and work, Orthodox Christianity is a tiny minority, intensifying those challenges, largely due to the issues of assimilation and acculturation to the wider society. As noted sociologist Christian Smith and Amy Adamczyk have written, religion should be considered a second language. They quote, "Parents conversing with children about religion is a powerful signal to children of religion's personal importance. People usually talk about what they care about, whether it be sports, politics, music, or romantic relationships. But normally, talk about something indicates that it matters to the talker. When all the parents say about religion to children during a week is something like, 'Okay, everyone, leaving for church in 30 minutes,' that is telling. When conversations immediately turn after religious worship services to non-religious interests, that is telling too. The messages may be subliminal, but their accumulated socialization effects are powerful. By contrast, when parents talk naturally and substantively about religion and its place in life throughout the week, that effectively indicates to children that in the mix of life's many priorities and values, this stuff matters a lot. So imagine the ride home from liturgy. If the parents complain about the length of the service, the quality of the singing, the preaching, even the coffee, and the church gossip, those negative messages not so subtly teach a child that church-going is a negative experience. If, on the other hand, parents discuss something substantive and positive that they experienced, from who they visited with, to an insight from the sermon, or a note in the parish bulletin, those positive experiences transfer to the children. Then imagine the daily routines. Dinners as a family beginning with a prayer, remembering a name day, a bedtime blessing, observing a fast day, lighting incense on a Saturday evening, reading the Bible and other religious material openly, committing to participate in a parish education program or youth ministry group, discussing the importance of financial contributions to the church. These can create concretely a home context where faith is experienced, practiced, and thought about all in a positive way, without coercion, without angst, without extremes, but lovingly shared, because this is what we do as Orthodox Christians. We are also members of the church, the body of Christ. From the Acts of the Apostles, we know how this first church lived its life. And I quote from the book of Acts. Those first Christians, quote, devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and fellowship, to the breaking of bread and the prayers, and fear came upon every soul, and many wonders and signs were done through the apostles. And all who believed were together and had all things in common. And they sold their possessions and goods and distributed them to all as any had need. And day by day, attending the temple together and breaking bread in their homes, they partook of food with glad and generous hearts, praising God and having favor with all the people. And the Lord added to their number, day by day, those who were being saved. Religious educators have read this passage and have come to see it as the curriculum of the church, the course of life that the church observes that teaches what it is to be a Christian in any time and place. Parishes, large and small, live a life of fellowship of believers, ekinonia, a worshiping community, liturgia, a community that serves its members and neighbors, a diakonia, and one that preaches, teaches, and bears witness, kirigma, mathitia, martyria, to their faith in Jesus Christ, inviting others to join them. In short, this community creates the environment, the fertile ground where faith is experienced, lived, and nurtured, not only for children, but for all of its members. When there is attention paid to these areas of ecclesial life, there is a high probability that the faith will be handed forward to another generation. The role of the educator and the educational ministry of a community is important for this life, especially in our day and age. Simply, our members want to know why we do these things. That's the way it is, isn't a good enough answer. This is where our educational programs, from Sunday church school, adult education programs, parochial schools, and in some countries, the public school systems, play a role. Through these various programs, with resources created by expert religious educators and theologians for them, the Orthodox faith and way of life is taught. Educators make connections between the faith, the way of life, and our holy tradition. But this takes us back to the beginning. The best religious education programs, the best lessons can hand forward the knowledge of our faith. But what is necessary for the faith to be caught, to turn knowing into being, are families and parishes where the faith is lived in a dynamic and meaningful manner. For example, telling the story of St. Basil the Great and the creation of the orphanage and the hospital, the Vasilopita, as a creative response to the social needs of the day that is deeply rooted in the teachings of Christ, can help believers understand that they too are called to respond to the social needs of their day, and the church can then provide the opportunities that put that response into action. Nurturing the faith and way of life is a complex but lifelong process. Each step in our lives brings new questions of faith and life that we must address. The lessons learned in childhood are needed to shape our identity as Orthodox Christians, but they cannot always provide answers to the challenging questions of adult life. The way we practice our faith as children must mature and develop as we practice our faith as adults. Thus, we must continually be learning and learning from others, from our parish community, our bishops and priests, and from the accumulated wisdom, the holy tradition of our church. As St. Paul writes to the Ephesians, until we all attain to the unity of the faith and of the knowledge of the Son of God, to maturity, to the measure of the stature of the fullness of Christ. Thank you.